Cedric and I have a whole lot in common right off the bat. As I answered the phone, I was sharing with him that we are brothers in Christ as well as fraternity brothers. So I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. But Cedric Dukes is the author of 4 books: Hostile Takeover, Manifesting God's Plan and Purpose for Your Finances, The Power of Time, Living a Life of No Regrets, which was on the BCBP National Bestsellers List, What Every Marriage Must Know, and the newly released book on man. He has written for several national and regional publications. Cedric has also spoken at national conferences across the U.S. and has been a guest on national radio shows. Thus, he is doing this morning as well. He graduated from South Carolina State University with a Bachelor of Science Degree in Electrical Engineering Technology and Wayne State University with a Master of Science Degree in Engineering Technology. He is employed as a Vehicle Engineering Group Manager for General Motors Corporation in Warren, Michigan, GM. His past assignments including being a Global Commodity Manager, Cost Reduction Manager, and Quality Manager. Cedric is a member of the greatest fraternity in the world, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Currently, he serves as scholarship chairperson in his local chapter and is a member of the South Carolina State University Board of Visitors. He is married and have 2 children and resides in Shelby Township, Michigan. Welcome to the Reading Circle microphone, Cedric Dukes. Cedric, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to come on today. Wow, it seemed like that introduction was powerful, so I really do appreciate that. And it's been a great morning here in Michigan, near Detroit, Michigan. I live in Shelby Township, so great here being with you this morning.
Well, it is great to have you. And you're now, Michigan, you're on the East Time Coast zone as well, right?
I'm on the East Time Coast zone as well, so I'm so happy that you and I are connected at the same time zone.
So we're in the same zone. It's 7 in the morning. Okay, good. I always have to look at the map to see where Central Time begins and West Coast and Mountain Time and all that, and I'm never sure if Michigan is on Central Time or if it's on East Time. So I'm glad it's on East Time, so that means it's 7 o'clock over there where you are and not 6 or 4 or what have you, like I was saying a few minutes ago. All right, for those in the listening audience, you know that the bulk of my guests I obtain through social media. And I've shared this story with you before in terms of when social media first was kind of coming on board, especially like whenever the first one started, MySpace and all that. I just totally looked at social media as a kid thing. I was asked for kids. I had no interest in it whatsoever. And one day the light bulb came on in terms of being able to use social media to promote the show as well as connect with other people. And it has been a godsend from that standpoint. So Cedric and I met through Twitter. And, we're going through, I'm constantly tweeting out about the show being on Saturday mornings. And I have various authors that will tweet me back every now and again, letting me know about their work. And then this was the case with Cedric. He sent me a tweet asking, would I be interested to either to listen or purchase any of the books, to read the books or whatever. And you know what I said? I have an opening this coming Saturday morning. Would you like to appear? Now, it was kind of sort of last minute because it was last week. It was early last week. And then I laughed, Cedric, because one of your books is on time management. And I had totally, with everything else I'm doing, had totally lost track of time and had not gotten back with Cedric to say, yes, we're still on. So I see this tweet come back saying, are we still on? Yes, we're still on. So I get back in touch with him. Yep, everything's good for Saturday morning. But I apologize for that because every now and again, I do get out of time management myself. Not often, but every now and again. And this last week was one of them with everything going on. So I say all that to say I'm super glad that Cedric is here for a lot of reasons. One, because as I said a couple of minutes ago, we are brothers in multiple ways. Both of us happen to be African American. That's one. Both of us are Christians. That's two. And both of us are alpha men, meaning we're members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So we are connected in many ways. And the topics of his books are so important, particularly in 2018. I mean, they were important before, but I mean, the further and further we get into the way society is going, the more and more books like these are needed to be read and studied. Interestingly enough, Cedric, at my church this weekend is a leadership conference and leadership weekend. And I was there last night from 7 to 9. And when I leave here, immediately I'm going there because it's going to go from 9 to 12 this morning. And it's being conducted by another Alpha brother, Brother Joe Ratcliffe out of Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay. That's great.
And he is hilarious, but truthful in his hilarity and his transparency and his ability to say the truth as it is. But he's talking about how, as the church, we have to be able to make connections with this generation here. And I'm saying all that again to say that your books is a part of that, because you're talking about time management, you're talking about finances. And for our brothers out there, when I say brothers now, I'm talking about men, period. It is something, in other words, men have to be in their place. There's no doubt in my mind that we as men have to be in our place. And I'm not taking anything away from the sisters. I'm not taking anything away from the women, because in some respects, they're even stronger than we are. But we have to be in our place too. And that's why his book about man is so important. So I am going to take a very short information sharing time. It's not a break. You're not to go anywhere. You're not to tune out. If anything, I need you to encourage some more folks to tune in, because I need you to hear what Cedric Dukes is going to say throughout this time that we're together. So get on all your social media sites and tell somebody to get up, wake up, tune in on gobrave.org. If they happen to be in the northern New Jersey or the New York area, they can catch it on FM radio. I prefer the computer, but if they can get us on the radio as well, it's 88.7 FM. I'm going to share this information with you. And then when we come back, Cedric's going to walk us through how he got to where he is in terms of his books.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful when Mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. I wanted a better relationship with Dad, so I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I'm sure glad I did. Is someone's drinking troubling you? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
No matter who we are or where we come from, we all experience difficulties in life.
Military veterans know that sometimes it takes strength and determination to make it through.
Whether it's physical challenges or struggles on the inside, it takes strength to ask for help when you need it.
Learn how veterans like us have reached out for help, and hear stories of strength and recovery at maketheconnection.net.
Hey everyone, let's all stop what we're doing and take a moment. You see? Every moment can be kind of special. But they can be loud moments, goofy moments, dorky moments, it doesn't matter. Because every time dads like us take a moment like that to spend with our kids, well, it's pretty momentous. So let's take a moment to make a moment. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
You're listening to The Reading Circle with Marc Medley on Brave New Radio.
Yes, indeed, you are. You are listening to The Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. I actually kick off each Saturday morning at 6 a.m. The first hour, I have the opportunity to play the Good News in Song, which is the gospel music, or either I'll do commentary. And then by 7 o'clock, my guest is on the line with me. So my guest this morning is Cedric Dukes, and he's calling out of Shelby Township, Michigan. Now, as I said, Cedric, I generally don't have a question sheet in front of me. But one of my first questions I kind of ask is, where did the whole writing thing begin? And this is really interesting, given the fact that your master's and your undergraduate is in engineering. So when did you decide that you wanted to become an author?
Mark, I really didn't decide that I want to become an author. This was, I believe, Holy Spirit inspired. It was like 2007. It was at a New Year Eve service at my church, and I just heard the Lord speak to me that time. He said, "You're going to write a book." And I'm thinking, okay, I know I did not hear that. And then he said, and then I'm saying, no, I just put that out of my mind. I'm not, books, writing and me, it doesn't go together, because in high school, I used to get, C's. So I used to get all those red marks on my paper. So I'm like, I don't want to write. And he continued to speak to me about, you need to write a book on finances. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I am not rich. I'm not a writer. So why am I writing books on finances? At that time, I was just reading about finance, and I was frustrated with the periodicals that was out there, because sometimes when you talk about from a financial standpoint, they always talk about the natural aspect of investing, budgeting, but it doesn't talk about the spiritual principles of what money does. So I began to write. My heart wasn't really into it. And the Lord just spoke to me and saying, you have to write this book on finances. And he gave me the words, he gave me the topics, he gave me the principles to use. And at that time, my wife and I was following the spiritual principles of finances. And then lo and behold, that one book turned into 4 books. So I didn't start off wanting to be a writer. I went into engineering for a purpose. My parents were science teachers. My wife is an engineer. So George Washington Carver was one of my heroes. And so I didn't want to write. And so the Lord, it was Holy Spirit inspired. The Lord really dealt with me through writing. I felt it to be therapeutic. I felt that I can be able to get things on paper to kind of help people to look at the topics that we most have trouble with.
And the finance book is interesting because this is the title of it. And matter of fact, I downloaded that one last night because I went through the 4 and said, which one do I want to start off with? And that's the one I wanted to start with. It's called Hostile Takeover, Manifesting God's Plan and Purpose for Your Finances. And I'm going to go right on Cedric's website where it describes the book. At no time in our recent history has the economic situation both in the United States and the international community been in such crisis. That still holds true even from the time you wrote the book.
Correct.
Families everywhere are facing foreclosures, bankruptcies, and unemployment at a growing rate. What we need is to take control of our finances and regain our stability. In Hostile Takeover, Manifesting God's Plan and Purpose for Your Finances, Cedric Dukes goes back to the basics and reminds us that everything is in God's hands by connecting all the dots to the greatest financial advisor, our Heavenly Father. Dukes shows us how to turn our money troubles around by a hostile takeover and to manifest God's plan and purpose for your personal finances. With Hostile Takeover, you'll be able to understand the 4 key principles and promises for your finances: stewardship, budgeting, giving, investing. The book highlights become the CEO banker of your personal economy. Design a robust plan to create sustainable growth now and in the future. Limit outside influences and begin a hostile takeover of your finances. Use finance as a tool to get to your goal. Now, I found the title of it interesting. Talk to us a little bit about how did you come to that title, Hostile Takeover?
Yeah, it came to the title of Hostile Takeover. It's like a company, as you know, in the natural world, in the business world, another company takes over another company. Say, for instance, that company has the finances, the resources, and the investments to take over a smaller company. And I wanted to parallel that particular title, Hostile Takeover, that we have to become the CEO of our finances. We have to take over our finances from a hostile takeover standpoint. Not mean to fight or anything, but it's to understand the principles of a hostile takeover. When you begin to look at a business, they understand the larger company takes over the controlling interest of a smaller company, takes over investing, takes over budgeting, takes over the balance sheet, takes over the rate of return. So understanding that, we have to understand that same nature of our finances. Now, I'm not saying that we have to be a financial advisor or being financial services. I'm just saying that we just need to know the basic principles of finances. And that's that stewardship, understanding that we can't spend our money on everything. We must know where every dollar in our pocket goes. We have to understand budgeting. I've read something that even after the collapse in the financial sector, over 60% of Americans still do not have a goal, have a budget today. And that's something that we're still dealing with. In the giving, we have to understand that giving spurs so much in terms of finances, understanding how God wants you to look at your money. And investing is nothing but a spiritual principles. And in the book, I put biblical reference scriptures on giving, on investing, understanding that is part of the process of our finances. And so understanding from a hostile takeover is, if we understand those 4 key principles, then we're going to be okay. And I'm not saying that you're going to be a super millionaire or what. I'm just saying that you can be able to use the money that God has purposed you to use. That's it. Point blank.
Absolutely. And the giving piece is very interesting because, see, I'm big in that area, and I totally believe in that piece, because the more you give, as they say biblically or in the songwriter, the more you give, the more he gives to you. Now, that's not necessarily the purpose for why we do it, but it's almost kind of like one of the laws, invisible laws, if you will, that really people don't, for the most part, believe. I mean, as I was saying last week, I was doing a whole little thing on gratitude and gratefulness, and for the most part, I don't like to generalize, but for the most part, we're kind of like sort of a selfish society to a degree. And when I say that, I'm talking exactly what we're talking about here in terms of that principle of, I don't think a lot of people really believe that the more I give, the more I'm going to get. I think people believe that, kind of like that zero sum game. For every dollar I give, I'm out of a dollar.
Right.
It's not as if it's going to go circular. And so that's kind of like, in some respects, a hard sell. And yet for those of us who really do understand it and believe it, we know, because it's almost like, and because the other thing is, people think it's going to like a tit for tat thing, like it's something going to be immediate. But what I have found, Cedric, is that just throughout the process of tithing and giving, that whenever hard times do come, it never falls short. A way is made one way or the other. Whether it's the company or the bill collector saying, you know what, we're going to give you a pass on this month, we'll take it next month, or whether it's someone coming up with money that you loaned 5 years ago, you know what, I just forgot about it, now I'm paying. One way or the other, a way is made.
That's correct. And some people, and sometimes we think that people want to pinpoint a giving to a certain act, and I'm saying that you can't.
Right.
Acts 20:35, Jesus says, it's better to give than to receive.
Correct.
Just to understand that is, there's freedom in giving, but there's also freedom in receiving also too. And what we have to understand, that sometimes our giving is not necessarily for the harvest that we're going to get. Say, for instance, I'm giving my tithe, or if I'm giving my offering, I'm expecting something tomorrow. That is not necessarily true. That is nowhere I see that in the Word, in the Bible, that says that connects those two. Sometimes our giving is for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, or 20 years down the road. We can't connect our giving. So God is so sovereign. He's going to do things on his own time. So all he's asking us to do is to be obedient, and just be sacrificial in our giving. I'm not saying that you have to give a certain amount in your offering, but just plan that. And he loves a cheerful giver. So again, it's better to give. It's better to give than receive, because there's freedom in giving. Once you give, your heart begins to open up, and then God does more things for you, not just from a financial aspect, but he gives you better health. He gives you favor on the job. He gives you blessings in different areas, communities. So we're just not talking about from a financial standpoint. We're talking about a holistic, where he opens opportunities for you in different aspects. And sometimes we forget that.
Absolutely right. Now, for those, again, I always kind of sort of put the disclaimer out there, because I do recognize everyone in the listening audience may or may not be of the Christian belief. But whatever your belief is, whenever we start talking biblical talk, there are principles. And I do believe, having kind of looked across in terms of studying to a degree the various religions and beliefs, some of these principles run across the board, whether you're talking Quran, whether you're talking Torah, whether you're talking the Bible, some of these principles run through all of those various doctrines and documents. The giving principle is one of them. And exactly what Cedric is talking about is absolutely right. And that's what I was saying. If you think that you're going to give something in church or give something to someone on Sunday, and then you're going to get something back on Monday, it doesn't necessarily work that way. Now, it doesn't mean that it can't happen, because every now and again, like Cedric just said, depending on God's timing and God's will and how he wants to work that, it could be the next day. Or it might be something 10 or 15 years from now. Cedric, last week or week before last, I was sharing, we had like a little snowstorm. It was big enough. It was big enough to close schools. Let's put it that way. And It was a few inches on the ground, and I have a driveway and everything, but I don't have a snowblower. Now, I've been threatening to get a snowblower for in each year. I still don't get it, and the snow come, I have to go out there and shovel. But as it turns out, my neighbor does have a snowblower. So on this particular day, and listening audience, if you listened a couple of weeks ago, you've heard the story, but you can hear it again. On this particular day, I went outside as they were doing their walk, because we all kind of come out together. And whenever I came outside, I was getting ready to shovel my sidewalk, and I looked and it was already done. And so I was like, wow, sidewalk is done. So I went, I thanked my neighbor and said, thank you so much and everything. And then he, said, you're welcome, so forth and so on. So then I still had to clean off the cars, and I had my driveway to do. So as I'm about to shovel that, the brother comes over and he says, how are you going to do your driveway? And I said, well, I'm going to knock it out. I'll just push the snow off with the shovel and I'll clean the cars. So he said, don't worry about it. So he now goes get the snow blower from his brother, and he now does my driveway and everything. And I tell you, Cedric, I was so appreciative, I didn't know what to do. So now I'm like ready to give him something. All right, what is it you like? What do you I want to give you all something for doing this. And he said, you don't have to give me anything because we're neighbors. Right. And I said, but everybody doesn't see it that way. I agree with you. Because had I had a snowblower, I'd do the same thing. Right. But my point is, back to what you were saying, there's two parts, there's two components of this thing. There is the receiving and there's the giving. And what I had said at that time when I shared the story a couple of weeks ago was a lot of us don't even know how to receive. We do exactly what I was ready to do, give something back. You just did something for me, I want to give something back to you, not knowing that we could be blocking somebody else's blessing. That whole notion of what you were just talking about, of allowing someone to give because that's how they're going to be blessed.
That's correct, and definitely correct, Mark. So sometimes we don't understand, and we like to give all the time, but we also have to receive. And sometimes there's seasons, a giving and receiving season, and we have to understand that in some cases, God is trying to get some things to us, and again, it's those small things, and we have to understand that. From a receiving standpoint, is that just receive with a glad heart. Sometimes a person who is giving to us needs to give those things to us, whether it is, again, cleaning our driveway, whether it is opening the door. Sometimes a person has that in the heart, knowing that they need to do that. I truly believe no matter who you are, what culture, what religion you believe, something is always working in your heart. You want to do something good for people. And we have to get to that point that allow people to bless us, allow people to help us. And I'm not saying to take advantage of a person. Right. I'm just saying that sometimes that person needs to do that, and they're going to be so adamant about that they want to give to you. So you're right, and sometimes we definitely have to understand the receiving piece and just be comfortable with it. And I'm still struggling with that today because I always want to do. And you want to make sure people want to be able to give opportunity to help you also.
That is correct. Now, there are 4 points in the book, 4 key principles. We were just talking about the giving piece, and we touched on the investing piece, and then there's the budgeting and the stewardship piece. Now, stewardship is a term I think a lot of people kind of get confused about as well. And stewardship for me is kind of like consistency. In other words, it's not kind of like a one-shot deal. It's kind of like your lifestyle or how you live or being your commitment. So let's say, for example, now we're talking about giving, and let's say, for example, in the church you are a tither or what have you. That is a part of your stewardship that you've now said, this is the way I am going to do business. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about stewardship.
Yeah, stewardship, and if I go back, stewardship is basically handling. The definition of a stewardship is handling someone else's resources. Correct. So when I say that, when talking about stewardship in a biblical principle is our finances, everything is coming from God. Correct. So He expects us to be managers. Correct. And when I say managers, is we're the stewards of His finances. We don't own it. We don't hoard it, even though some people may want to do that. But we are stewards of His principles, just like our house or the places that we live in. We're stewards of that. So from a financial standpoint, we're stewards. And I'm not saying that you can't do anything with your money, and if it's in your budget, it's fine. But in the book, I talk about, when we talk about stewardships, do we understand that, every time I get paid my bill, do I go out and buy me a new pair of shoes, or do I go buy a new purse, or do I go buy me a new suit? There's something more intrinsic value in stewardship is understanding what you have. And God wants to bless you, no matter what culture or religion there is. He wants to bless you, but what are you thinking about first? What is the main thing? The main thing, I call it that way. What is most important? And one is paying your bills, whatever you need to do. And then if you have money left over, then if you feel free, you can do whatever you want with your money. But stewardship is basically handling the resources that God gives you. That is it. And I wanted to make sure that people understand that it's nothing super spiritual. It's just basically just handling, it's being a manager of your resources. And it's like being a father, and for those women, like being a mother. You steward your children until they are grown, until they're out of the house. And that's what it is from a stewardship standpoint.
Absolutely right. And it's interesting that you would say, because again, and we were talking about this last night again in the leadership conference, and I saw it somewhere in a book the other day too, that the more intellectual people become, the more they think they're the ones doing it. Mm-hmm. In other words, like they get so intellectual that they don't need God. Like there's nothing outside of myself that's doing this. We see people as who believe in God, who believe there's a higher power. We see them as weak or either silly because they're now looking to something outside of themselves when truly it's you doing. In other words, kind of like that pull yourself by your own bootstrap type of philosophy, when the truth of the matter is, as you just said, none of it is ours.
Right.
Now, for those of you in the listening audience, if you don't believe that, you heard that in one of the songs I was playing last hour, where if you get sick, all the money in the world, depending on what the illness is, all the money in the world will not get you well. Now, if that's the case, Steve Jobs would still be here. Rockefeller and them might still be here because they had the money. So it's not necessarily, as he says, the resources don't come from us anyway, but yet we are tasked to manage it. And part of the managing is, because we keep talking about God blessing us, but a lot of times God uses us to bless somebody else. And the question becomes, what are we doing to make life better for others? And a part of our stewardship and our tithing and our giving and so forth and so on is to help make life better for others.
That's true. And it's so true, Mark. And so many times we have to understand that we are connected to people, to different people in our lives, whether it's our nieces, nephews, whether it's our family members or some special friends that we have. There's some things that we have to do for them in the stewardship, and maybe we have to support our family members going to college, or we may have to support our family members with some finances, with whatever we have. And so we have to get to the point that we're so interconnected with others. It's not about hoarding money. It's not about what my net worth is. It's about understanding what God wants us to do with the finances that He's given you. And I really believe that when we go to heaven, He's going to ask us, "What did you do with the resources that I give you?"
I do too.
I gave you. And that's a scary feeling.
Yeah, it is. I believe that as well.
Because you can't lie. He's going to show you a movie of your life. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but He may show you the movie of your life and say, "Well, that didn't happen here."
Right.
So I really believe that He's going to show us. He's going to ask us a question, and that's what the Word says. Also, is that we will understand the things that we've done through our life. And so we just have to live our life the best we can. He knows the issues that you have. He knows your financial issues. So He's not asking for you to do something that's out of this world.
Right.
He's just asking you to be a steward. And I think that if we have that common sense and we understand that, then we're going to be okay. So I just think that we just have to get to the point of just use your finances as a steward, and no matter how you look at it. And that stewardship means the next point is budgeting.
Right.
And from a budget standpoint is, if you want to do something extravagant for yourself, like go take a vacation or buy a new pair of shoes or buy a new purse, put it in the budget.
Right.
No problem with that. It's, hey, if you got to take 3 months in order to save up for a new purse or some new shoes or a new suit, then do it.
Absolutely.
it's fine. And so I think we have to get to the point. Don't feel condemned, but just put it in your budget, and God will bless you no matter what. So we'll be okay. I just think that we have to get to a point of just have a stewardship mindset, and that financial crisis that happened in 2008 and even sometimes going through the day won't hit us because we are already stewards.
Absolutely right. Now, let me tell you why I believe that question is going to be asked as well. Because if you look biblically, whenever he'd given the various denominations, it was the talents. When he'd given them the talents out, the one that he gave 1, the one that he gave 3 to 5 to 10, so forth and so on, he did come back and ask, what did you do with what I gave you? And the one that had received the 1 gave, the excuse, and that was the one he took it from him. And said, all right, you know what? He took it from him and gave it to the one that had the 10. So I honestly believe that's coming as well. And there was another point you brought up in terms of the spirit of giving. Again, if we look biblically, there's the parable in there with the woman who only gave the 1 mite. Mm-hmm. And so he was sitting there watching now, and you had all these folks that had the money. I mean, they were rich, and I guess as we call rich, and they were making a big show out of what they were giving. And yet that didn't mean as much as the woman who only had 1 and gave that 1. Mm-hmm. All right.
That's true.
So it's the spirit behind giving. Are we doing it for sure? And I told you, we have Joe Ratcliffe is doing our leadership conference. And like I said, he is absolutely hilarious. And he has like one of the quasi, or if not, he probably has one of the mega churches in Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. So he describes how his congregation they're middle class and they're relatively affluent, and they're all pulling up into the driveway in the high end cars. But what he was sharing with us last night, he said, you know what? All these folks with the Lexuses and the Benz and the Studebakers and the Rolls Royces, I've yet to see them put a $10 bill in the plate. And so we laughed, but we knew where he was coming from in terms of, okay, they're still giving that $1 that all of us give, back to the giving thing again, that dollar in church. There's a joke that I heard years ago where they said money was talking to each other. And you had the $100 bills, and they were talking and saying, giving all their experiences where they've been to the fancy restaurants and the fine clothing stores, and they've been abroad. Then you had the $50 bill, and they were talking about the various stores they've been in. Then you had the $20 bill. They were talking about the movie theaters they've been to, and this, that, and the other. The $10 bill talking about the fast food restaurants they went in. And then when you got to the dollar bill, they asked the dollar, well, where have you been? And the dollar said, I've only been to church.
Wow. and that's a good point. And I want to go back to from a spirit of giving. And I call it, there's 2 purposes for giving, and it's in chapter 9 of my book. And it talks about the first purpose of giving is an earthly purpose.
Right.
And like you said, discussed in Acts 20:35, we are supposed to help the sick, the orphans, the poor, and the widows. And I'm not saying that we should dump everything that we have in our bank account to do that. I am saying that we are supposed to help them.
Correct.
And it's our responsibility to sow into the kingdom of God. Most people think the kingdom of God, and I'm not saying most people, but sometimes we think the kingdom of God is the church.
Right.
The kingdom of God is the people.
Right.
That is out there. And so whether you see somebody who don't believe in Christ or who is a different religion, different culture, we're supposed to help them.
Correct.
He loves kids. God loves kids. He loves the widows. He loves the people who are destitute. And he came for all of us. The second purpose of giving is internal. And it talks about, in Matthew, talks about lay up not yourself treasures where it rots and where it corrupts, but we need to lay up things in heaven. There are some things that we are giving for that's going to be there when we get to heaven. And I'm not saying, I don't know what it is. The Bible didn't really explain that, but there are some things in heaven that he wants us to have that we just need to lay up. And whether it is helping somebody or saving some money, whatever it is, there's some things in heaven that's going to be there for us. We're not going to get everything that we want here on earth. If so, it would be very easy to do. And so we have to get to the point that there's some things that we're going to see in heaven. And for those who believe, who are Christians, that's it's going to propel us. So we just got to have those 2 purposes in our mind, is to help others and and understand there's some things in heaven that God's going to give to us, and it's going to be a great opportunity for us to rejoice.
Absolutely. And one last thing before we move to the next, because they're all connected in my mind, what we were just talking about. This is a quote from last night's session. The church has to be about the masses and not the classes. Exactly what you just said. Whether you believe, whether you don't believe, it's the world. The kingdom of God is those of us who inhabit the earth. And you're so right there. And then back to the budgeting piece, the giving part can be budgeted. And that's where it all connects. That if in your budget, I'm using the tithing model, but if you know if you're budgeting, 10%, whichever way you do it, whether it's net or gross, whichever way you go, but if you know you're going to do the 10% off of that, that's a part of your budget.
That's correct.
And you work that in terms of whatever else is left, you work to do whatever else you need to do. But if you budget, as you just said, that allows you to be able to do everything, whether it's, part of it I budget for giving, part of it I give it for my new shoes, part of it I budget for the electric bill, but that's all a part of your budgeting.
That's right. That's true. It's all a part of your budgeting. So in our budget sheet, we have so many things where we just put everything in there, and sometimes we may not even use those items, but it helps us to kind of think what we need to do as a family, and it goes to a goal and goes to purpose. And budgeting, giving, budgeting, savings, budgeting, kids' college, budgeting, if we're going to give to somebody to help others, it's this budgeting, and it's basically to us, it's just a sheet. It's just how do you live your life? And not saying, and some people think budgeting is constrained. Yes, it can be constrained, but also it can be joyful, because you know that, hey, I don't have to worry about saving for this right now because it's going to be later on down the line. So we just have to get to a mindset of, from a budgeting standpoint, it's going to be freedom. It's going to help you as a guide. But also, and I call it, we just have to continue to listen to the Holy Spirit, what God is saying to us, that He may want us to do something else. And from a budgeting standpoint, in terms of give here or give there, or save here or save there. So we just have to get to that part from that standpoint. But budgeting helps us. It propels us. And what we've seen over budgeting is year over year, we've been doing this for a long time. We started, with paper, writing down on college rule paper. Right. Now we're in the computer. What we find is we can go back from year to year, month to month, to see which bills are due, what our insurance bills is due at this particular time, what did we spend at this time last year. And then it gives us a guide in order to help us to say, okay, so now we really can't do anything here, so let's try moving money in certain areas. So it really helps us as a guide.
Now, this is a perfect segue in terms of the next book. And like I said, I'm not necessarily doing it in the order that you wrote them, but they all connect to me, because even though we were talking about money, you also have to be a steward of your time. You also, because time is a resource that's given to us as well. So your book, The Power of Time, Living a Life of No Regrets. What are you doing with your time? You have 24 hours in a day, or 1,440 minutes in a day, or 86,400 seconds in a single day. So that's what's allotted to us. That's the resource. Now let's talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about, time management.
So time management, I wrote this book because I was going through a time in my life where I was spending a lot of time in a certain area of my life. And I began to realize that I was wasting a lot of time. And when I said I was wasting a lot of time, it did not benefit me in terms of what, for the outcome, or it didn't benefit the organization I was a part of. So I had to understand that I really had to make some changes in my life and understand, God is first, family, and then everything comes next. And so I have to understand that time management was key. Most people say, well, I don't have enough time in a day. We have 24 hours, the same as our former President Obama, same as Mother Teresa, the same as other great leaders Bill Gates. So they do well with that 24 hours of the day. And so we have to understand, from a time perspective, is nothing part of stewardship. And I really believe that, again, we're going to be asked the question, what did you do with the time that I've given you on earth? Did you waste it? Did you use it in an area that you're not supposed to be in?
Right.
And so I keep saying that, and I keep saying that time is something that we have to understand. And time is money, and money is time. We have to connect those things. And once we understand that, we can move forward. Our entire life is dependent on the decisions that we make, and we have to understand that the decision that we make is going to move us into the right perfect timing or the wrong perfect timing. And so wanted to write a book on the principles of time to help us understand what we need to do in order to save more time, because I call it time wasters. And just very brief, and I say this in my seminars sometimes, and this is so true. If you the nightly news, I used to get hung up with news all the time. And if you understand that the news in the morning is the same as the news at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night.
That's right.
It's the same thing. And they get you to say that, hey, we got a special breaking news at 11 o'clock. And basically, it's the same news. Nothing is different. So I just implore your guests, get up in the morning, look at the news in the morning, whether it's local or national, and look at the news at 6:30, and look at the news at night. It's the same thing. Nothing is new. And even if you're listening on the radio, it's the same thing. So that was part of my time waster is just listening, sitting down and watching TV, listening to see if anything's changed. Nothing has changed in 24 hours. If so, then you would know. So
absolutely,
that was just part of my time wasters that I had to learn a hard way.
And that's a wonderful example, because I know, like, for me, and I was, interestingly enough, last night, Reverend Radcliffe was saying how he has to take a fast from the news. And I laughed because I had just told my sister, I said, I have to be in the mood for CNN. In other words, I could go 2 or 3 weeks without watching it at all. And then I'll pick back up on it as like a soap opera. And then there are nights, and where I'm going with this is the insanity of what you just said. Because at least you gave us 6 in the morning, 11 in the morning, 6 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night time frame. If you sit down, and usually I'll turn on CNN maybe around 5 or 6 o'clock, and go through the various hosts. And each host is saying the same thing, and yet we'll sit there and watch from 5 o'clock to 11 o'clock to hear the same story repeated over and over again.
It is so true. I mean, even now, when you just look through it, every channel is doing the same thing. I'm not saying that they're doing a bad thing, but I'm saying that we have to choose what we want to listen to. And the way I filter it now is I just get the breaking news, and then all the commentary I just don't listen to, because sometimes everybody's saying the same thing.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you. It's like I'll have to sit there and look at myself and say, Mark, and those are nights I might just want to just sit there and veg out, because that's actually what happened. One of the nights I'll just sit there and I'll listen to Wolf Blitzer, I'll listen to Aaron Burnett, I'll listen to Anderson Cooper, I'll listen to Don Lemon, and each of the 4 have gave the exact same report. The only thing changed was the talking head. And then, as you said, they'll have the various commentators that'll get on there and say the same thing. And you'll watch from 5 to 11 o'clock at night. And like you said, it's not a bad thing, because maybe for some people, the way their schedule works, they'll catch, or they have their favorite or whatever. But on the nights that I just sit there and watch it from 5 to 11, and you talk about a waste of time, that's it.
Right. And, I had to get, and I say, if you want to do that, and I created in the book, I have a time budget, just like a financial budget. And so, you just have to choose. If you choose to watch TV for a couple hours, then that's fine. I know me and my wife, Wednesday night is our date night, and our date night's at home. So we still watch Survivor, and we still watch our shows. And so we just sit there from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock watch the TV, and which is fine. I mean, you choose what you want to do. And I say is, if you want to watch the news shows or want to watch certain shows, hey, just budget it out.
Right.
Say, on a Saturday, I'm going to watch from 7 to 11 this show on DVR, and I'm going to watch it. And that's fine. I mean, you understand that that's the choice that you make, and sometimes we want to do that. And not to condemn anyone, but if you want to do that, go ahead and do it.
But I'm with you because whenever I'm saying and what I'm saying, what you're saying, it really is not about condemning, but it's like, how can we do things smarter? Because one of the things that we constantly say and hear is that it seems as if time is going faster. When the truth of the matter is the breakdown that you gave in terms of the minutes, hours, seconds, it has stayed the same. Now, maybe we get busier, and the question becomes, well, what are we busier with? And how much time are we wasting? And can we do the same thing with our time that we do with our money? Can we say, okay, like you just said, like me and my wife are the same way. Thursday nights is ours. We like the show Chicago Fire. So from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Thursday nights, we watch Chicago Fire together. But again, that's planning and budgeting.
Yes. Yeah, and it goes to the point is understanding what our purpose is in life, and I talk about this in the Power of Time, and I go through this is what is your life goal, and if your life goal is one of your goals is to have a better relationship with your wife or with your spouse, then you would do things like that. So we have to understand the fact is what is our main goal, what do we want to get out of life, and then we go from there, and we budget that time. And say, for instance, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you may spend 2 hours a day doing different things. So if you want to be that writer, you spend an hour a day writing. So it is how we budget our time, understand what is the main thing that day. And one of the things that I do is on a daily basis is, hey, just write down 2 or 3 things that you have to do today. Whether it's work, whether it's in school, whether it's with your family, 2 to 3 things that you had to do, and just do those. And once you get those things done, hey, your day is free. So you may spend 5 minutes on it. You may spend 2 hours on it, or you may spend 8 hours. So that's something that we have to understand, that our time is budgeted every day. We have 24 hours, 1,444 minutes, 400 minutes, or 86,400 seconds in a day. Everybody has the same time. So we have really no purpose to say that we don't have enough time. And if you break time down by the hour, and especially, and I do this in seminars, most people sleep for 6 to 8 hours. Most people work 6 to 8 hours. So in reality, you have about a good 6 hours of doing what you want to do.
Right.
After that time. You may be in school, so you may pay 2 hours from there. You may be in church, so that may be 4 hours. So you really have a good 240 minutes to do what you really want to do. So we do have enough time. I find that out the hard way that, hey, yes, I have enough time after work, after school, or after certain activities, after dealing with the family. You have enough time to do what you need to do, whether it's 5 minutes or you have 2 hours.
Absolutely right. And one thing you said that is key, that listening audience, and I know this has worked for me and has worked for most. I've read many books on the subject. And you just heard Cedric say it in terms of writing down. Now, what gets written gets done. Now, there are different debates on to-do lists or whatever, but I do know for me, I have a whiteboard in my office at the school. And when I really know that I got to get something done, I write that on that whiteboard in front of me. And before the day is out, those things that's on that whiteboard is done. And there have been other days whenever I knew in my mind what I needed to do, but it did not work out quite as well. But I do know whenever I jot something down, as Cedric just said, or either I put it up there on my whiteboard in front of me, it gets done. So if you do nothing else, if you know you have a few things you need to do for a certain day, write it down. Literally take it out of your mind, put it in from the pen onto the paper, and put it somewhere that you can refer back to it. And trust me, whatever it is that you need to get done, if you write it down, you will get it. It's something about that writing process that forces us to get whatever it is that we said we're going to get done.
Right, and that's so true. And I've been going through this for a long period of time. I write things down all the time in my book, and I realize that when I write it down, I see it. I won't say it becomes a burden, but I need to get that done.
Right.
Another thing, goals. We put goals where we're at the most, and I say we put our goals in the bathroom, so we know.
That's right.
When your goals in the bathroom, you're in there. You got to do those things. That's what that you're going toward. And so we have to get to that point from that standpoint. But I also try to use my phone. And
that's right.
For me, it's not working as much as I would like it to be because I can just look at it and ignore it. But when it's on the paper, I can't ignore it. I can't ignore it at all. I can't. So the phone is easy to say, okay, I don't want to do that right now. But when it's on the paper, it just seems like I'm held.
That's right.
And so it's different for me.
No, it's the same way, and that's the crazy thing about once you've written it down. It really does seem like it binds you. It almost is like a contract. I mean, it really does feel that way. It feels that way for me too. That's why I say I know once I've written down. And it's interesting that you said like if you do the sleep 8, work 8, you have the 8 hours left, and then a couple other things in between. You do have a finite amount of minutes for that time to do whatever it is you want to do. But if you can prioritize and write them down. I don't want to say 100%, but I know for me it works. I mean, I've jotted things down on napkins that whenever I knew I had to do it and I took that napkin with me, it got done. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I had a child in my office and she's like in 6th grade. And I was asking her, she's always in my office for some kind of little silly trouble, not anything major, but always something silly. So we were having a conversation, me, the guidance counselor and the vice principal and her, so forth and so on. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's that age old question. She says, I want to be a pediatrician. And so I said, well, first off, the fact that you know it this young gives you an advantage because you have the opportunity to find out all the steps you need to take to get there, provided you don't change your mind in between. But where I'm going with the story is something you just said about the bathroom. So what I did for her was I went on Google and found a picture of an African-American female pediatrician or a doctor that had on the white smock, the stethoscope and everything. And I printed the picture out for her. I said, I want you to hang this in your bathroom, either your bedroom or your bathroom, somewhere you can see it every day. And for you to look at that picture and say, that's going to be me one day. And it's the same thing with what we're talking about here with the time thing, with writing down the goals or writing down whatever it is you need to get done for the day or what have you. It's the same principle. You see it, it keeps coming back. Like you said, it almost nags you.
Yeah, it does. It nags you. And most people say, well, how do you write your books? How do you find time? For me, it was just like 30 minutes a day writing, whether, when I have time after work or early in the morning. It was just 30 minutes a day. Yeah, it may take me longer in order to do it. But the fact is that that's a goal that I said I wanted to do, that I wanted to make. And writing, it nags you. I mean, not the writing piece, but the goal nags you and saying, okay, I need to get this done because this is what I said I was going to do ahead of time. So you're right. From writing, I found that writing goals, get it out of your head, and I call it that you have to get goals out of your head so it can breathe. When it's in your head, it doesn't breathe. No one understands it. So when you write it down, you write it on a whiteboard, you write it on a piece of paper, put on the mirror, everybody takes hold of it, and it's breathing.
Right.
So I can accept my wife goals. I can accept my kids goals. I can understand what they want to do. If they say they want to go work out, if they say they want to eat better, if they say they want to save more money, whatever, I can understand that now. So now that goal is allowed to breathe, and now we're able to do more things as a family.
All right, which works us into the next book. What Every Marriage Must Know. What Every Marriage Must Know is written to enlighten married couples and individuals who are interested in marriage and the importance that God has placed on it. Oneness begins when you say, quote, I do, unquote. Oneness is demonstrated through a lifetime of experiences in which each spouse gives 100% of their life to each other. Talk about that point in a second. Street signs and signals have been utilized in our society for decades to help us navigate unknown territories and to reach our destinations. Marriage has a similar navigation process. There are warning signs and signals before and during a marriage to help couples identify strengths, weaknesses, and deficiencies. If couples pay attention to these signals, they can ensure a successful marriage. This book is a roadmap for you to follow for your marriage to become successful. The highlights of the book include marriage is a partnership between individuals from different families. Good point. Each spouse brings experience, values, and expectations to a common goal, which is oneness. Marriage is always in a learning stage. Excellent point. A peaceful home must be a goal of marriage. So let's talk a little bit about that for about 4 minutes or so, and then I'll flip over into the 8 o'clock hour and we'll continue on, and we're working our way up to the latest book, which is about man. So the thing I said about the 100%, that caught my eye, because a lot of times you hear people talk about 50-50, when the truth of the matter is it's 100-100.
Right. So and this book was written by me and my wife and another couple, Adrian and Senior Brown, and we talk about how you have to give your all in marriage. If you give 50%, everybody give 50%, you only give 50% of your strength, 50% of your finances, 50% of your life. You have to give 100% of that to each other. And the crux of the book, the main point is we want to say oneness, understanding that you have to become one. And that's what that 100% is. If I'm dedicated to you and my wife is dedicated to me, then the marriage is going to work out. Yes, we're going to go through issues. We're going to go through storms. We're going to go through trials. But if we're totally dedicated, if we're totally understanding what we need to do as a couple, then it's going to work out. Most people will say, well, you need to do, here's the 5 steps that you need to do to stay married. We call it just become one with each other. I'm dedicated to you, you dedicated to me, and that's it. And from there, that's the work that you have to do. Now, you have other steps in process, listening and receiving and all that, but that oneness piece is, I just need to be dedicated. As a man, I need to make sure that we continue to date. We continue, I come home at the right time. I have to do those things so to say that I'm dedicated. I have to cook, clean, whatever. So that means I'm dedicated in order to make sure that the marriage goes.
Absolutely. And as we were saying, in terms of the 100-100, now people say, well, that can be. Yes, it can be, because you have to, as Cedric just said, you have to give all. Mm-hmm. And that's the way it works. And the other interesting part, and we're going to talk a little bit about this after I do the weather and all this for the 8 o'clock hour, is that first highlight that I don't think many people really give thought to. And that's the fact that you have individuals from different families. I'm going to put a pin there for a minute, as I have to do what I need to do at 8 o'clock hour. But we're going to talk a little bit about that bullet point when we come back, because that is major. The influences from each side that now have to come together, that's a major point or a major factor that I'm not sure many people take a look at whenever they're thinking about marriage at the moment, because, once you fall in love, if you will, it becomes very emotional and everything else kind of is blinded. You're blinded. But there are other things to consider, such as the fact that, like that first point there, individuals from different families. All right, so hang on. Again, I hope you've been listening since 6, but certainly since 7. And if you haven't been, then you just tuned in. My guest is Cedric Dukes. We're talking about his various works. Get on your social media sites. Let somebody know that we're on the air. We have about another 20 to 25 minutes or so to talk during this interview. Like I said, I hope you've caught all of it, but certainly catch this last piece, because we're talking about what marriage must know. And then we're going to move into the latest work concerning the role of man.
WPSC, Wayne, New Jersey. On the radio, 88.7 FM. Online, GoBrave.org. A tune-in radio station. Part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey.
This is
the innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless.
They have awesome variety.
The kick-ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
Here's your North Jersey weather report.
All righty, it's 8 o'clock a.m. in the Wayne, New Jersey area. We are working our way up to a high of 48 degrees and a low. We're going to drop back to 9 of 30 degrees. Expect to be plenty of sun today, so it's going to melt some of that snow that's on the ground. Tomorrow, a high of 46, a low of 35, expected to be partly cloudy. And then Monday, afternoon showers, 42 degrees as a high, 37 degrees as a low. Tuesday, we're back up in the 50s again. 53 is a high. 32 is a low, but it's going to be rainy though, but that's all right. It'll be warm water. And then on Wednesday, 39 degrees as a high, 24 as a low, mostly cloudy. So warmer temperatures today and ahead for the next few days. Grateful and thankful for that. And that is the weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. My guest this morning is Cedric Dukes. He's actually an engineer and an author amongst other things. And we're talking about his various books this morning. We've gone through 2. We're working on our 3rd one, What Every Marriage Must Know. That's what we were talking about prior to the break. And I had put a pin in it right before we shared the information, did the weather and all that with you, on the point that said marriage is a partnership between individuals from different families. So this is the thing. When a couple gets married, and that's why we had the, quote unquote in-laws, mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law. Really, it's not just the couple getting married. It's the 2 families that are marrying.
You're so true. I mean, it goes back to a point of when I grew up. I grew up in Tennessee. My wife grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. And yes, we're from the South, but our cultures were different from from where we started from. And so many times that, we have to understand there's not just the person that you marry, but you marry in the family. You marry their values, you marry their systems. And it goes back to finances. It could be one spouse believe in saving money, and so all they did was save. Their family did was save, and then they got probably another spouse who believed their family, all they did was spend money. So you have to merge the 2 together and understand that. It's so many times, so you have to get to a point to understand that things happens in families that you're dealing with. So, maybe there's a traumatic experience that happened with your spouse in the past or with the family. You married into that particular issue. Yes, you're there to help that spouse, and you may say, well, I don't want to deal with it, but you married into that. So you're married into their attitudes, their values, their thinking, their mindset. And so that's how you have to get to the 100%. And once you get to the I do piece, because once you understand that you marry into another family, you marry into their values and their beliefs and their faiths, then you have to get to the point of saying, what do I have to do to make the marriage work? And so many times we as couples, as spouses, don't understand that our spouses. I'm dealing with issues that happened in the past. My wife is dealing with issues that happened in the past. I'm dealing with relatives. I'm dealing with cousins. I'm dealing with friends. I'm dealing with past relationships. So we have to understand that it's a partnership, and there's going to be differences, and we have to get through those differences. And it's okay if you have disagreements. It's okay that sometimes you may not like the differences in the families, but we just have to get to the point as long as the 2 of you are together to work on. And that's why you have to allow your spouse to talk. That's why you have to talk through that, because you have to get to a point to say, I'm dealing with this issue in my life, and this is stemming from something that happened a long time ago with my family members. And so we have to get to that point. And that's why I said that marriage is nothing but a partnership. And those individuals are going through different issues that happen in their life.
No, you're absolutely right. And one of the key things you just said that I don't think enough couples, and even probably myself included, do, and that is to talk in terms of real issues. Like when you were talking about, and I get it, some past events can be painful, but in a marriage, it needs to be shared so you know what you're dealing with, because a lot of times you might be thinking you're fighting against a person when you're actually fighting against an issue. You're fighting against something that happened, and that's what's driving their behavior or their attitudes or how they interact with you, and you don't know that. So all you know is that's another person that's treating me this way, and I don't know why you're treating me this way, so therefore things start going south and downhill. So it is so critical to get out whatever it is. If it was a molestation, if it was a rape, if it was a bad experience here, if it was a traumatic experience there, whatever it is, it needs to be gotten out so that each of you know what you're dealing with.
And that's so correct. So many times, couple may have intimacy issues, and you have to, I believe, a spouse has to understand why is there intimacy issues. There may be something, as you said, happened in the past, some abuse that person has to get through, and it's not the person who's rejecting you; is rejecting the subject
right.
of that intimacy. So it's more than just I don't want to be with you. I don't want to talk with you. It's about that person going through that mindset. It's a mindset change,
right?
And you have to get into the mindset of the next person to understand. And it's frustrating. It can be very frustrating to say, "Why is this person not accepting me?" But it's not against you because it's really against the issue. And we're dealing with that, and it's a psychological issue that we have to deal with. And I believe if couples understand that and give their 100% to each other and understand those things, then we're going to be in a much better area from that standpoint.
No doubt. And I realize the book is about marriage, but I can even take it to like just when I deal with kids every day, like some of the things they're going through at home. Based on how we come at them, it will come out. Like I have kids that if you yell at them, it freaks them out. And the reason it freaks them out is because in their home, there's been abuse or something. I have kids that if you even try to grab their hand and walk them down the hallway, don't touch me. It's because they've been touched in a way they weren't supposed to be touched. And I'm saying all that to say the same thing, those same kids are now going to be one day somebody's partner. All right, let me tie it together that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm not sure if your audience had a great show. This Is Us. Randall, African-American guy on the show. He was raised by a white family. And it comes on Tuesday night on NBC. And he was abandoned as a kid. And so him and his wife adopted a girl. And he was trying to be the father of the girl. And he grabbed her hand and she jerked back. And she said, "Don't touch me or don't pull me violently." And that goes back to the point is some people, the girl was probably abused.
Right.
The girl was probably yelled at. And so some people can't take that. Some kids can't take that. And so you have to understand that. And it goes back to even with our kids, even if they're not abused, in some cases, my daughter, I have to talk to her a certain way versus I have to talk to my son.
Right.
So everybody's different. You can't yell at one kid and get the same response for both. You have to have, it's almost like you have to use a psychological kind of conversation in order to have that, in order to make sure that that is right. And it's more work on the parent than anything else. So it gets to a point is we have to understand that partnership piece of it. We have to understand everybody goes through traumatic experiences. And we have to get to the point of understanding how do we help others in order to get to their God-given goal.
Correct. And that's where the bullet point where it says marriage is always in a learning stage. It really is. Because every day or in each conversation or each disagreement or argument or whatever, you learn something a little bit new that you didn't know. That will help you. All right, you know what? I didn't realize that as a child you couldn't take yelling. So whenever we got into that argument, that threw you into a whole different frame of mind. I mean, those are the type of things you learn. Well, I didn't realize this happened with you. I didn't realize you have trust issues because of a relationship that you had in the past where somebody dumped you or whatever they did on you. So all those things is constantly coming out as you go along. And at the end of the day, you really want peace. You really do, because we get enough negativity and hell and everything else outside of the home. You certainly don't want that inside of the home.
That's true. That's correct.
Which leads us now to the latest book, and that is the whole notion of man transforming our families, our communities, and in our world. Now, when we opened up, I said I'm convinced that because we as men, and I'm talking, I'm not talking about just me and Cedric. I'm not talking about anybody in particular in the listening audience. I'm talking man in general. Because in too many instances, we're not in our place. That's why, in some respects, some can say the world is in the shape that it's in. And again, I serve in a community. I serve in a school where predominantly most of my audience, most of my students in the building are coming out of single family homes. And most of those homes are being led by women. As a matter of fact, a lot of the kids don't even know how to react to a male per se in authority. Or it's the flip side, that they're so glad to have a male in authority. They're doing things that either they shouldn't do, or either they won't listen to the women at all and they only listen to the men. It has all kinds of things. And the whole thing with the breakdown of the family, that's a piece of it too, because if the male's not in his place, for the most part, the family's broken. All right. So that's why this book is so important. Man, transforming our families, our communities, and our world. What makes a man tick? What makes him act out of character? Is it him, his surroundings, or was he born with the short end of the stick? In some cases, in our attitudes, traits, and character, we men are not living up to our purpose. When a man understands his purpose and walks in it, he impacts his family, community, and world. This only happens when a man has a transformed heart and mind. The book highlights your actions shape the destiny and direction of your future and family. Yes, it does. There are multiple mountains a man must travel and cross. Oh, yes. A man can impact one person, one community, and a world by his actions. Yes, indeed. A transformed man leaves a legacy to his family, community, and world. Those are the 4 highlights. Now, interestingly enough, again, biblically, God is interesting. I always find God interesting. I truly believe he has a sense of humor and everything else. But he will ask questions that he already knows the answer to. So whenever, like in that whole scene with Adam, when Adam thought he was hiding, he's Adam, where art thou?
Right.
He already knew the answer. But it's the same. I can almost imagine that same question being asked in terms of we as men. Like, where are you? And to your book's point, once we get where we need to be, you'll see a whole lot of things change. So where did that come from? Where did this come? Because this is your latest release. How'd you get there?
I get that. I was writing, as, like I said, I like to write on different topics. And probably 3 years earlier, I just kind of wrote it and just put it on the back burner. I'm like, okay, nobody's really going to read this. And that's just my thought. And then I really began to see, especially, as being alpha men, we are charged to uplift, serve humanity.
Correct.
And we focus on men, on young boys, and to grow them up and to be something great. And so, as being a scholarship chairperson and being a Big Brother program is doing a lot of mentoring in schools, you see different things, and you see in some cases that some of the young boys were not getting the proper attention. Well, the proper attention was they're getting the proper training that they need to be. And I began to look at it and say, okay, what is a man? And when I grew up, I had both of my grandfathers. I was fortunate to have both of my grandfathers and my father that showed me to become a man. And then I had friends around me that showed me what a man is. And then I had the fraternity to show me what a man's supposed to be. And so I wanted to write something. The fact is that being a man is more than just being out there or just fathering a child. It's about transforming our families. It's about transforming our communities and transforming our world. And as I write in the book, I am not being chauvinistic. Women has done great things. They sometimes they are doing things that the father's not doing. And they are doing things that father's not doing.
Correct.
And they are doing a great job with our young boys and even young girls. But I do really believe that a man does change the community. And when you begin to look at all of our communities in the microcosm of the world, the thing that's missing the most is strong leadership. And I'm not talking about a man needs to be on TV, needs to lead a march. I'm talking about a man taking care of his family, taking care of his community, and taking care of his world. And that is showing that love and respect to his wife. That is showing a love and respect to his children. That's showing a love and respect to the people around him. Because you, as a man, you can impact a person. And it's all about being a transformed man in your heart. And I wanted to show that as a man, that we can do that. We can transform our families, our communities. It doesn't have to be, our cities don't have to have the highest murder rate per capita. Our cities doesn't have to have the highest unemployment among black men. upon men itself, rather. Cities doesn't have to have that. So when we have a mindset of what we're here for, we have the mindset of what God made us to be, and everything points back to God. Is I really believe He's going to ask me this question again: what did you do as a man with your family, in your community, in your world? And I have to be in my mindset. Excuse me. I have to be in my mindset to prepare to answer that question to Him. And all of this is just things that we learned in the past. What is it to be a man in terms of it, to be a steward, to be a provider, to be, I call it a prayer warrior. I mean, we really have to pray for our families in our community. We have to be a father, and
Correct.
we as a man have to understand our brand, a man in this brand. I mean, so many times you see, that men, their brand is tarnished. When a man has his brand tarnished because some things he's done, it transfers over to the kids. So if you understand that the fact is, as a father, I do something wrong that impacts the whole world, then my kids is going to have a tougher time in order to deal with that issue, because one is the image of the father, two, they have my name. So we have to understand that as a man. How do we understand our brand, understand the different things? I'm not saying that we're not going to do things wrong, but think about the consequences before you do that, because it impacts more than you. It impacts your family, it impacts your whole legacy, even your grandkids. And I can name people all over the place to say, look at the things that he's done that impacted his families. And then we'll begin to see, yes, it's about a man and how he interprets the things that's going on in the world.
And so you're absolutely right in terms of the brand, the image, so forth and so on. And unfortunately, the perception or the brand that people think is not. And what I mean by that is the things that you just described, you'll get some to say, well, that's soft.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, no, it's not soft. That is tougher to do than being the Mr. Tough Guy. That's tougher to do than being the player. That's tougher to do than to being the one who decides I'm not going to get any education. That's tougher to do than someone that says all I'm going to do is stand on the corner in front of the liquor store. To be what Cedric was just describing, it takes work. Now, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe folks don't want to do the work. Maybe that's part of the problem. It takes work. But the truth of the matter is that's work that's needed. And you said something key, too, about praying for your children. If you look in Job was praying for his kids. Mm-hmm. If you look in the Bible in Job was praying for his children. And as men, we have to be able to lift our children in prayer, whether they're in the house, out the house, whether they're grown, whether they're still tots. We have to put our children in prayer for covering. Because we were talking about the news not long ago. There's been some crazy stories over the last couple of days with families. Like there was that one with the 14 kids that have been tied up for X number of years. There's one that I heard with some other craziness going on. There was one here in the New York area where over the last 3 days, one young lady was stabbed to death and two more kids were stabbed right there in the school.
Wow.
So we have to pray for our kids in terms of covering. And you are so right. Our actions impact our kid. I can reflect on some things I've done or not done and how it's impacted my kids. And you are right on point there.
Right, and so many times that we have to understand, we have an impact, and it all starts with us, and we go back to God created Adam, and then Eve. He took Eve out of the side of Adam. He didn't take him out of the backside. He took him out of the side. So that means that we're partners in this from a marriage standpoint. And God looks at us. I really believe God looks at us to lead our families, and it's a partnership, but it's also that we set the tone, we set the difference of how our families should act, and we just need to make sure that when we're our consequences, whatever you do, the consequences of your, the consequences of your action is going to play a large role in that. And so we can change our families. If you change your family, you're going to change your community.
Absolutely.
If you change your families, you're going to change the world. So it just start with the family. So that doesn't mean that I have to go and register people up to come follow me. No, just start with your families.
Right.
Because once your kids see you as a man. This is your standard, and your kid's going to follow that standard, and then the friends are going to follow their standards.
Right.
And everything is going to turn around. Now, there's going to be some times where your kids are going to attract people that are totally opposite of your values, but when they hang around you, they're going to see that, oh, I want to have a father like that. I want to be a man like that.
Right.
I want to have a family like that. So it's contagious. So it's not all it's the soft stuff, but you have to be willing to do those things.
Correct.
And still have fun at it.
No, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting you brought up the Adam and Eve, the whole, I brought it up earlier as well. But the truth is, God created the family before he created the church.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
So back to your point of if we can get the families together, we can start impacting communities, start impacting worlds, so forth and so on. You're absolutely right. And I laugh because, and I have a crazy sense of humor. I really do. Because I just, even in the most morbid thing, I can find something funny about it, which is kind of strange. But on this conversation that we're talking about with men being out of place, there's a part of that I tell women, look, I got a secret for you. Let me tell you how we can do this thing. And I tell my little girls in the school, and all these little tackhead boys want to get their telephone number and their emails and all this kind of stuff. So I tell you what you do now. You got to have your stuff together too. But when they ask you for that telephone number, ask to see their report card. And if that report card don't have some decent grades on it, I say, well, I tell you what, once you get your grades up, then you can give me a call. Cedric, I am convinced I would have more boys on the principal's list if girls would say that. I am convinced, because I know the boys would. Look, I want that number, so if I have to study to get that, then that's what I would do. But again, that should be something that would be that you would want naturally. But hey, if that's what we got to do, girls, you know what? Look, you want to call me? I need to see your report card. I need to see your GPA. And one day I said that to the girls, and one day it was after school, and the girl knew what GPA stood for. I guess the boy didn't. So whenever she did go back and say, what's your GPA? The boy looked at her and said, what's that? So she sees me in the parking lot laughing. Said, Mr. Medley, I asked such and such if I could see his GPA. And he said, what's that?
and that's so true. I mean, especially a boy, if you want that number, you're going to do everything.
That's right.
In order to do that. But that's a good secret. And it's almost telling ladies today as to see a man credit score. It's
in other words, the long and short of what we're saying is we got to have some standards.
Right.
And it's got, look, I'm not just going to take any old thing. You got to have some standards. And I do believe once both parties get clear on what the standards are, that's going to raise everything too. I think men will, I mean, like you just said, with your children, once they see, you know what, I wish I had a dad like that. They see the standard. Mm-hmm. And that's where it all connects and fits together. I could not agree with you more. Once we get in our place, and I'm not saying we're perfect, because we're not talking perfection here. But we're talking about men being in their place. I mean, you were saying it earlier, the fact that you're a male does not necessarily mean you're a man. The fact that you have male genitalia does not necessarily mean you're doing what a man should do.
Right.
And so we have so many instances where guys think that because I have 15 kids by 15 different women, that they the man. Mm-hmm. And they're not raising any of them. They're not supporting any of them. And they think they're the man. Not realizing you may have that man that's married to his wife, has one child, and doing everything that you just described, that's truly the man.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's true. And so we have to get to a point is, men, we have to change our mindset. And I really believe that once we change our mindset in understanding what we're created for, understanding what our purpose is, then we can change the world. We can change our families. And there's so many times that our responses in community is going to be based upon our responses. So once we understand that, then we're going to be okay. We just have to get to that point on understanding what our motivation is and how we can move forward. And, and as in each man, and we go through different things, as I write in the book, we go through meeting mountains. And as a man, we're working on ourselves the whole time that we're leading our families. And perfect. There's mountains that you need to cross every day. It's personal issues that we have that we we know we have in our mind. And so we're still working those issues, but we also want to be the best man that we can be because, one, your family's looking at you. Two, your coworkers looking at you. Three, your students are looking at you. So people are seeing you from afar, and this is the persona that you're continuing to keep. Is saying, if I know that you have some issues and you're still being an excellent man that you are being, then I'm going to respect you more and more. And so that's what we had to get to the point of.
All right, we've come to the end of our interview, but what I always do, Cedric, at the end of the interview is I turn my mic off and give the guest the opportunity to promote in terms of their books, services, book signings, seminars. You can say anything with the exception of a dollar amount, but anything short of that, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Brother Mark, for having me on. I really enjoyed this hour and a half talking with you. It's been great. It's been enlightening. Anyone want to just look at what I have, just go to my website. I'm at www.cedricdukes.com. Again, www.cedricdukes.com. I'm there. I have my blog there, updated regularly. All my 4 books are there. I also have audio books of each of my books, and you can get those at Amazon, you can get those at iTunes, and you can get those at audible.com. I also have ebooks that's available. Those are at Amazon and it's at Amazon KDP Kindle, so you can get those there. So I'm accessible. You can reach me through Twitter at CD Leaving Legacy, CD Leaving Legacy, and then you can catch me on Facebook, Cedric Dukes. I have my author page there. You can find me. It's all about just getting the message out. And my whole point is I just want to be able to help people that they want to be helped, that help people going through issues of life. Life is already tough, and if I can make some sense to it, I would like to do that. My books are very short in nature. There's probably no more than 115 pages. I do that on purpose. Again, I'm an engineer, and the way that the book reads is like an engineering manual. I'm not using high terms or sophisticated terms. It's almost like a manual. It's almost like an instruction booklet in short chapters, and I have pointed questions. So feel free, go to my website. I will ship the books to you immediately. I sign book for those who purchase books. Again, our audio books are available, and then the books are available on Amazon also. So, Brother Mark, I really appreciate you having me on. If anyone want to get in contact with me, I'm at cedricdukes@gmail.com. Again, cedricdukes@gmail.com, and my website is www.cedricdukes.com.
Now, for listening audience, it is exactly spelled exactly how it sounds. CEDRICDUKES.com. And the same thing with his Gmail. So exactly what you hear is exactly how it's spelled. Do reach out. Go to the website. There's a lot of good stuff there. It's chocked with information. Like he said, you have the home, you have his bio, the book releases, the blog, the speaking engagement, how to contact, all of it's there. So it's chocked full of information. And again, being a part of the greatest fraternity in the world, one of the things we say is we say manly deeds, scholarship, and love for all mankind are the aims of our fraternity. And certainly what I'm hearing and seeing from Brother Dukes is that manly deeds, we're talking about the man, scholarship, and love for all mankind. As I said earlier, the church, we have to reach the masses, not the classes. Like he said, the kingdom of God is not the church, is not our buildings, not our churches. The kingdom of God is everybody. All right. So that's certainly what we've been talking about this morning. His books addresses all those areas in life. They're life areas: time, money, our characters, being in our place. They're all in there. Our marriages, all of these books, manly deeds, scholarship, love for all mankind. So I thank you for rising early with me this morning. I have recorded it. I get everything edited down. I'll be putting it on my YouTube channel, and then I'll get you the MP3 link as well, and you can do whatever you'd like to do with it.
All right. Thank you again, Brother Mark. I appreciate all the work that you've been doing and all the knowledge you've been sharing. And again, I appreciate that. And I thank you to the audience for listening.
All right. Thank you, and have a blessed day, week, and rest of the year for that matter. And we'll be in touch.
We'll be in touch. You too.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right. That brings us to the end of another Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley.